For decades, cyber defense has felt like a game we're destined to lose, a constant game of cat and mouse, where, let's be honest, we're usually the mouse. But what if I told you there's a way to flip that script entirely? Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful concept called the offense death cycle. It represents a fundamental, and I mean fundamental, shift in how we think about protecting our digital worlds. You see, for so long, it's all been about this reactive mindset. We build our walls, we set up our alarms, and then we wait. We wait for an alert, we play defense, we respond to whatever the attacker's already doing. But this new way of thinking, it's a complete 180. It's about proactive control. It's about shaping the battlefield, seizing the initiative, and, for once, making the attacker respond to us. So why the big change? Why is this shift so critical right now? Well, it all comes down to something we can call the defender's dilemma. Look, we all know and love our frameworks, right? Things like the Cyber Kill Chain or the MITRE ATT&K framework. They are absolutely amazing tools for cataloging and understanding what attackers do. But here's the catch. By their very nature, they position us downstream. They help us understand actions that have already happened, which means by definition, we're always reacting. And that, right there, is the heart of the problem. In this nonstop fight, a purely reactive posture means you've already given up the most important thing, the advantage. You're essentially just standing in a ring, waiting to get punched, instead of controlling the fight yourself. But it is not all doom and gloom. Not at all. Because we, as defenders, have this incredible, often totally untapped superpower, and that is the home field advantage. This whole idea is built on a pretty solid foundation called cyber persistence theory. And the core concept is actually simple. It says that cyberspace isn't a place where attacks just start and stop. It's a state of constant contact. And in an environment like that, real security doesn't come from building bigger walls to deter attacks. It comes from maintaining the initiative. And this is where it gets really good for the defenders. We own the terrain. It's our network, our cloud, our systems. We have total control. We can reconfigure, patch, segment, or change literally anything we want at any time. We have the power to reshape the entire battlefield whenever we feel like it. Okay, so we've got all this power. How do we actually use it? Well, that brings us to the playbook, and it's called the offense death cycle. All right, take a look at this. It's not some crazy complicated flowchart. It's a simple, elegant, continuous loop, and it's designed to replace that old linear way of reacting. You've got 3 core phases here: intelligence, induced friction, and anticipation. So let's break them down. So, phase 1, intelligence. Right away, we're flipping the question on its head. We stop asking, hey, what is the attacker up to? And instead, we ask a much more powerful question. What does the attacker need from our environment to succeed? What stable conditions are they relying on to stay hidden and do their work? Okay, so once we know what they depend on, we move to phase 2, induced friction. And this is the fun part. We deliberately and proactively go in and break those dependencies. We create friction. We change the environment. This isn't about blocking one specific attack. It's about shaking the very ground the attacker is standing on. And that leads us perfectly into phase 3, anticipation. We've just thrown a wrench into their whole operation, right? Now we watch. How do they react? How do they adapt? Because when they try to fix their broken tools or reestablish their access, boom, they reveal themselves. And all that new information feeds right back into phase 1, making our next cycle even smarter. Now let's make this super concrete because it can sound a bit abstract. Think about it, what do attackers need? They need stable user credentials. So what's our control lever? An unscheduled, system-wide password rotation. They rely on predictable schedules for maintenance windows. We run a regular maintenance or simulated security audit. Each of these things is a normal administrative task, but when you time them deliberately, they become a weapon. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds great in theory, but does it work? Well, this isn't just theory. Let's look at how this plays out in the real world. And you know what? Sometimes it even happens by total accident. Yeah, sometimes the power of just changing the environment reveals itself completely by chance. And when it does, it can have absolutely jaw-dropping results for an attacker who thought they were perfectly hidden. Take the massive Equifax breach in 2017. The attackers were inside their network for over 2 months, just quietly exfiltrating data, completely invisible. And you know why? A single SSL inspection certificate had expired. Then, on July 29th, a sysadmin does a totally routine, everyday task. They renew the certificate. The second that happened, bam, decryption was restored and all that hidden attacker traffic lit up like a Christmas tree. One tiny accidental act of friction blew the entire operation wide open. So that was a lucky accident, an amazing lucky accident. But it begs the question, what happens when a defender uses this principle deliberately? What happens when this kind of environmental control is part of a long-term strategy? This story is just a masterclass in proactive control. In 2017, the NotPetya worm absolutely devastated organizations across Ukraine. But one major institution, PrivatBank, was largely untouched. Why? Because years before, they had made a huge strategic decision. They migrated their core banking systems to a proprietary Linux platform and strictly separated them from their Windows networks. They deliberately created an environment that was fundamentally hostile to Windows-based attacks. So when NotPetya came knocking, it just stopped. It hit a wall and couldn't spread. The environment itself was the defense. So when you pull all of this together, what's the real end game? It's not just about winning a single battle. It's about winning the war by making the other side just give up. This means the entire objective shifts. We're no longer just trying to stop a single attack. We're trying to make attacking our network so expensive, so frustrating, and so unpredictable that the adversary just decides it's not worth the effort. You achieve what's called operational exhaustion by constantly pulling the rug out from under them. And really, that's what the offense death cycle is all about. It's about empowerment. It restores agency. It gives control back to the defender. It transforms you from being a passive target, a punching bag, into an active shaper of your own battlefield. It's about finally using that home field advantage. And that really leaves us with a final, powerful question to think about. It's time we stopped asking, how do we stop the attacker, and we started asking a much, much better question. How do we make the attacker's job impossible?